Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. Today we are here with my teammate Justin Rios' first place Yardrat Goku deck profile from the Sunday regional at GenCon. This list went 7-0 in Swiss. There was no top cut playoff, but yes, this is what many of you guys may know as Dripku. I personally just find all the Ku nicknames very, very corny. I don't care for them, so I'm going to call it Yardrat Goku. He is in the Yardrat attire. I don't have Justin on for this profile. Would have loved to have him, but unfortunately, now that we're back from GenCon and our mini vacation is kind of over, we couldn't get our work schedules to line up to get this deck profile done together. So I'm going to profile it for you guys here, go with some of his notes and some of the things that I know he was thinking about the deck from our team testing. So with that being said, guys, if you are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways to do so down in the description. But today, guys, if you really want to support me, I am publishing my own comic book. Haven't mentioned it in a video in a little bit because we've been doing a lot of deck profiles, but that link is down in the description. I finally nailed down the artist for the project, so that is totally underway. If you guys want to support me, again, I'm publishing my own comic book, link down in the description to Indiegogo. Really would help me out. Anyways, let's get right into this. So of course we have the leader. Now, just talking briefly about the deck itself, this is a deck that a lot of people thought had potential coming out of Ultimate Squad, but it really put up, I'm pretty sure it put up 0 results as far as Ultimate Squad format was concerned up until GenCon, where Justin honestly pegged it as his best deck in format, or at least the deck that can counter the best decks in the format, and the triangle kind of being Trunks Vegeta in yellow, Gamma, and Red U7, right? Justin felt very, very confident about this deck's matchups all across the board, and even against Rogue as well. Like, this was his pick for the weekend, and of course, he's a super accomplished, strong player, so we're not really going to question his picks, right? But this deck, again, he did take it 7-0 through Swiss. So leader helps you get Unisons in play. That pay 2 energy sometimes seems tough to resolve, but the way the deck is built actually lends to that very, very well. And the entire time that I was at the tournament, and I would get up for my round, go see Justin's round, how he was doing after checking on all the other teammates, he was resolving the pay 2 like all the time. And it's actually really cool as well because it helps you not get milled out. A lot of blue strategies in this format, even like late game blue strategies like Baby and S4 Vegeta, one of their win conditions is mill, and this leader just puts 8 cards back to the bottom of the deck, so you're probably not milling out, which is really cool. But anyways, let's take a look at the main deck. So of course we have the 4 copies of the SSU Gohan Unison. The insane thing about this card in this deck, I mean, obviously it was made for this deck, but every time you play it in this deck in particular, it's usually a full board wipe, which is kind of insane. But obviously the -3 just helps you go for game. Then we have 4 copies of Vegeta Z-Fighter, a little bit of draw power, a little bit of removal. This card is really good at the SR slot for a main deck Unison. And then for the next Unison, we have Piccolo Z-Fighter. So one card I want to mention that Justin is not playing is the Yamcha Z-Fighter. So that card I think is not bad. It's got a draw 1 as a +0, and it also allows you to rest some battle cards, which it feels like yellow nowadays kind of struggles with offensive tapping ever since Power over Super Saiyan got limited to 1, but Piccolo has the draw as part of his auto, so you can always +1 him for a 15k if you kind of need to go like weenie beatdown, which is definitely an option with this deck. You can boost your Unisons to usually 10 or 15k, at least the small ones, I mean, so they can actually hit for damage. So yeah, Yamcha just seemed like kind of one of the least important ones, so I know that's why Justin really wasn't playing it. And then we have 4 copies of Trunks the Empowered and 3 copies of Gohan the Empowered. So Trunks, I know, is really, really important for the deck because of the +1. It helps you cycle through your deck, so you can pitch Unisons to the drop, so you get those kind of dead cards out of your hand. It also helps fuel the leader's backside pay 2 ability, because you might feel like it's kind of hard to actually cycle through Unisons enough to where you actually get 8 in the drop naturally, but Trunks is really good at just filling your drop area with Unisons to get that pay 2 energy effect to resolve. And then when either of them are sent to the drop area, they search out the other one, so you're actually, you know, keeping your hand at parity and sometimes plussing it depending on which other Unison you're playing. So they offer a lot of utility and a lot of hand size to the deck, so that's why they are pretty important here. And then of course we have the one of Piccolo Gohan SCR. It's just the best SCR can play in yellow, to be honest. I really don't think any other SCR choice is correct in yellow right now, especially this one. Like, you wouldn't play Pan in this deck because this deck is not very battle card heavy. I could see an argument for Supreme Kai of Time if you felt you really needed to control Unisons, but again, like this SCR here, just helping the leader push for that double strike finish on top of, you know, a cooler, let's just say, is insanely strong. Of course, 3 copies of Krillin, 3 copies of Gohan Furious Training. So this is a 1-drop that lets you search top 5 for Unison. So helps you find your SS2 Gohans, helps you find your Trunks if you need it, because again, Trunks is pretty vital to the strategy. And then it has the pay 2 ability that lets you play Gohan Z-Fighter from your hand. So that's really great. Like, you would think this would be an automatic 4 of, because you can play it for 1, you can search, at any point later in the game you can pay 2 to play your boss Unison, right? But problem with that is, if you play it on turn 1, odds are it's probably not going to survive to turn 3. But the problem with even playing it on turn 3 is it's susceptible to all forms of counterplay. So Charismatic Villain, God-Sealing Technique Trunks even. Like, God-Sealing might seem like a bad card to use against this Gohan, but if they do that, and let's say it's your exact turn 3, maybe you've already awakened the previous turn or something, now you like just straight up cannot play your Gohan Z-Fighter. So I basically say all that to say that while this card seems perfect for the deck in theory, it's kind of difficult to use, and it can actually harm you sometimes, but I noticed that Justin sided it out quite a bit. So it is one of the side out slots for the deck, but still it's a great consistency piece. Pay it for 1, maybe on turn 2 or turn 1, and search for whatever Unison you're missing. It can be very good. And of course, if you know your opponent has no access to counterplay, then it is an incredible turn 3 play, because you play it for 1, search top 5, then pay 2, go into your Gohan Z-Fighter. So that's definitely an option. But just kind of want to talk about it again, because I know Justin sided it out quite a bit, and just from watching the games played with this deck, it is a very vulnerable card. So I don't want you guys to play it on turn 3, and then it gets counterplayed, and now your turn 3 is pretty much over because you can't play Gohan Z-Fighter. Just kind of wanted to give that long-winded explanation. Then, of course, 3 copies of Cooler. So I know that Justin's philosophy of this deck, as well as many of our yellow players' philosophy on the team, is that if we're paying 3 energy, we want to play Cooler or we want to play Gohan Z-Fighter. Not much else is worth actually tapping 3 in yellow right now. And one card you guys might be thinking about is Dragon Fist Goku, which is actually nowhere to be found in this deck. While that card is okay, it's pretty susceptible to things like blocker negates and some other forms of counterplay like Videl. So that does run into an issue there. And again, like, we can just establish our Gohan Unison as another form of a win condition, and then for the Gohan, for the blocker negates, or for Release from Evil, or for any negate that kind of interrupts our strategy, we have Cooler to interrupt that, which is really, really important. So again, if we're paying 3 for something, it's either Gohan or it's Cooler. Then we have 3 copies of Robotic Riposte. So this might be a weird number. I mean, almost every yellow deck for the entirety of this card's existence has played 4 copies of Riposte, but the card's very answerable right now, and there are many other extra card counterattacks that lend to this deck very, very nicely. I could totally see the argument for playing 4. I do wonder if Justin ever kind of wished he had the 4th, but 3 is probably fine for all intents and purposes, in my opinion. 3 copies of Prideful Transformation. You'll see in the sideboard there's a 4th copy, which is kind of just like ratio fixing. But yeah, I mean, your deck always has a Unison basically from turn 1 most of the time. So this card always being live for free is really, really strong. 3 copies of Goku Saiyan Instinct. So this is another card that I know Justin really, really liked with Trunks the Empowered, because you pitch it to the drop area, you get it there naturally, you don't have to combo it in an instance where you wouldn't normally combo. And I know for a fact that Justin plays this deck almost like a charge pass deck. I mean, your leader gets you your 1-cost Unisons in play for free most of the time, and again, we're only really paying 3 energy, or at least a high multitude of energy, for Cooler or Gohan on turns that we really need to. So besides that, on a random like 2 energy or 4 energy turn, you can easily choose a copy of Saiyan Instincts, leave 2 open for defenses like Robotic Riposte and some of our extra cards, and you're going to be right as rain. So this is a really good synergistic card with this type of deck and this Unison in particular. 2 copies of Total Assault 2 Easy, just in case you need the removal on a cheaper body. It is a battle card body, which can be relevant in some cases. 2 copies of Goku Final Sacrifice. So this card's solid, but I'll be honest, this card is actually very easy to answer, because you're always going to use the counterattack on your opponent's turn, obviously, right? So your auto is a Spirit Boost 1, and it also requires you to sacrifice this card itself. So since your opponent is the turn player, their autos proc first. So if they're playing red, for example, or even green, and you counterattack with this, well, now you're opening a counter window. So if they use Videl, they can actually minus this guy before he can resolve his auto, which will cause it to fizzle. So this card's actually really suspect in some cases, but I mean, there are other cases where it's just a blowout, right? Like against Gamma, for example, if you counter with this and you pop their Android 1718 Limitless Energy Dual Attacker, that's incredible. So there are some cases where it's really, really good. Some cases where it could be good, but it's very counterable, but still a good card in a deck like this, in my opinion. 4 copies of Release from Evil. This card is absolutely insane, this format. I mean, just think about the mirror match. Locking your opponent's SS2 Gohan Unison down when they rip the -3 is great. Against Gamma Leader and SS3 Leader, their end of turn autos to restand all that energy are going to fizzle out because Release from Evil negates them for the entire turn. So that's incredible there. This is a card that is quickly becoming better and better in yellow in this format. So this is one of the decks that can best take advantage of it. 3 copies of Black Kamehameha. I mean, just an incredible defensive yellow card, not too much to say. 3 copies of Frieza Armor Reinforcement, of course. 1 copy of Power of a Super Saiyan, and 1 Double Strike Champa, just in case you got to dump on something else other than your leader. So that's going to cover the main deck. Let's go over to the sideboard. We have 2 copies of Goku, A Gift from Earth. So this is a tech that we all kind of came to for the blue matchup, and this is really good in particular against the Boo Unison because it's got Deflect, they can't God Sealing it, and then you can rip 2 markers off their Boo Unison and then swing this itself into the Boo Unison. It'll probably get, you know, -1, but at least that way you just remove 3 markers with 1 card. That's a really good interaction. And of course, there are other random unisons where this could be effective. This is actually also really good against the GT matchup because in certain cases you can actually kill their unison very early on in the game, and then from there they can't really play the game, which is kind of good. 1 more copy of Swift Retaliation Cooler, 1 more copy of Prideful Transformation, just kind of ratio fixing. Same thing with Sand Instincts, of course, you know, solid in your hand control matchups, solid in your long grindier matchups. And again, it's very hard to actually deck out in this deck because you have that leader ability to replace 8 unisons to the bottom of your deck. 1 copy of Jiren Survival of the Fittest. This is becoming more and more popular as a one-of in sideboards because blue decks are popular right now and yellow decks are not winning the game very early, and it's actually even hard to win the game against blue before turn 7, especially if you go second. So it is a pretty important one to have if you're expecting a lot of blue in the room. 3 Tyrannical Blow for your Topos, for your Robotic Riposte, even though Robotic Riposte doesn't really affect this deck all that much, but just for your cheap Floodgates, just a great card. 2 Forbidden Power. I think honestly our consensus as a team is Forbidden Power is actually better for its Activate Battle effect than it actually is for its Floodgating effect. Don't get me wrong though, like if you're going second against U7, you probably want Forbidden Power for the Floodgate, but the Activate Battle to tap down Trunks blockers, other barrier threats is insanely good. 2 Vegeta's Final Flash for whenever you might need it, and then 2 Death Blaster. This is really good in the SS4 Vegeta matchup, stopping their SS4 6-drop from ramping them 4 cards. It's also very good against the Cell Reboot deck, making sure you don't get your hand ripped by Perfect Force Cell. So that's the entirety of the deck, guys. Again, first place list, very strong deck, and one that not many other people are aware of in the format, and maybe it'll get more popular over time, who knows, right? But it'll be interesting to see as we move into Zenkai how this deck does, because obviously it's not a very combo centric deck, but still a strong one nonetheless. Very hard for people to interact with since it is mostly reliant on unisons, but a very different deck to play as well in terms of having little combo power at times, and kind of managing those resources is pretty important. But anyways, guys, that's deck profile. Of course, we got to shout out the team because, you know, we all put a ton of work in to get ready for Gen Con. Got to shout out Mystic TCG. Make sure to check them out in the description for your sealed product needs. And of course, DBS Deck Planet, best deck builder in the game, as well as an incredible sponsor. But anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below what you think about this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.